In this video, we are going to scrape some quotes by some famous people on this website called Quotes to Scrape. Um, so just some general things you should know about this website is it does require a login to be able to get to. However, it doesn't matter what username or what password you put in. It just matters that you log in. So that's something we're going to be tackling in this video. Um, so I'll quickly log in. I'm just going to put in a random username student and then I'll just put password as our password and I'll log in. Um, and there you see we can get into the web page, but into the site, but I can very easily just go back and just, I don't know, say one as the username and password and log in, and I can still log in. So the important thing is not the actual password and login combination here, but rather that you do log in to be able to get to the page. And you can see that we have a bunch of quotes, and we have quotes by different people, and we have some tags for the quotes, and I can go through the different pages of it. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be creating a web scraping function that's going to go through and it's going to scrape these quotes. It's also going to scrape the author of the quotes, and then it's also going to scrape the tags of the quotes. Then we'll be using this data to run some fun natural language processing on it to see what kind of insights we can extract. But that's the general structure of this website. It'll be pretty straightforward. We're just going to have to go through. Essentially, the way I would think about this is we'd want to create some kind of function that goes ahead and um, that scrapes all the quotes from this website, from one of these pages, and then gets this next link and then returns it back into the loop so that it can scrape the next batch of quotes. So without further ado, let's get into our Python environment. I'm going to create a new section called quotes to scrape. Okay, and then I'll add a subsection in it, and I'll just call this subsection web scraping. And then I'll have another section for later, and that will be analysis. Well, let's start off with web scraping. So just like in the previous video, we're going to be using pandas, requests, and beautiful soup. So let me import those libraries. Pandas allows us to create data or play around with data frames. Requests allows us to access the internet. And then Beautiful Soup is a text parser that makes HTML content a lot easier for us to read. So let me go ahead and import those. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is it's going to be a little bit different this time. We need to create a session for us to be able to access the website. And the way to think about this, when you log into a page, what happens is when you log in, you create a session and you're given a token, and that session basically allows you to log into access different pages throughout the network, and it will check if you have that session to allow you to browse the different pages. If you do not have that session, then you'll get an error and you won't be able to access a website. And that's the basics of what is going on when you log into a website. So we want to do the same thing. So before we actually scrape anything, we want to create session. So I'm going to just create a new login URL, and I'm going to make that equal to our login URL, and then I'm going to create a payload. Now this payload is going to be what we pass in to the website. So to create the session. So I'm going to make the payload has two parameters. The first parameter is username. And then the second parameter will be password. And this differs from site to site what these payloads should be. So always make sure to check the website to see what those payloads will need to be. And you know what, before I get into the payload, let me show you a little bit more what's going on underneath the hood. So I'll go back here and I'll go to log out. I'll go back to the login page. And I want to go to inspect elements, and then I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go to network, and you see that nothing appears. But if I then log in, all of a sudden you see all this information just appeared as soon as I logged in. And if we look at that, if we go through this information, let me widen this out a little bit more. We go to login, we go to payloads. You can see this is the username and this is the password that I entered in, and here is my token that allows me to browse. So if I log out, all of a sudden there's no more payloads anymore. If I go back to log in, let's say I want my username to be student. I use the username student, and then I'll just say like my password will be love to read 2023, and I log in. I can go back to over here to my login, and I go to payload, and I can see this is the username I used to log into, and this is the password that I used, and here is my token right here. And so this is how I know this is the payload that we need to pass in to get into the site to create this session. So I can then go back. I know these are the two parameters I need to input into my dictionary. And I do want to say too, this is a very, very simple example of sessions. I do not mean to teach you how to do sessions in this video. Sessions are a lot more complicated than this. Sometimes they'll require the token as well. Other sites will have your session data encrypted. For instance, if you try to do this on Amazon, you'll see that username and password does not appear in your sessions data. They've encrypted it. So I just want to put this out there. The reason I'm including this is to expose you to the idea of sessions when web scraping, but this isn't necessarily. This is a very, very easy example of creating a session, and I just want you to be aware of that. But let's say I can then import this into my payload over here. So that's my username, that's my password, that's my payload. Session equals session request, and then I'll request a session. Okay, and that gives me my session. And then what I want to do is I want to get a response equals session, and then I can use a post with our login URL, and then I want to use the payload. Okay, and you see we got a response 200, which means we were successfully able to log in to our to the website. So we'll keep this session to access the other pages of the website. But let's start off with this first page, and let's start off by first attaching to this page. I'm just going to call this page equals what is this? This is just the main page. So that is going to be our URL. Then our session requests is going to equal to our session dot get page. And so what I'm doing is I'm using this session that we've created, and then I'm using that session to get that page, so we can view that page. And then if we look at session request, we can see that we were able to get into that page. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Beautiful Soup to get the to parse this page out, and we can look at just the text, and we can see that it's very gnarly. So I'm going to call Beautiful Soup, and then I'm going to take this content that we have and run it through Beautiful Soup using its HTML parser. Okay, now we get something that's a little bit more manageable. I'm going to set that equal to soup. And then we can go ahead and start to play around with the website. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just looking at this website right here, and I can see that we want to get the quote, we want to get the author, and we want to get the tags. And I can see that they're all in this element. So probably the first thing I'd want to do is just get all of these elements. So let me go back to element, to inspect elements, and I want to find what this is called. So this is a div class. This is a div, and it's a class called quote. And it looks like this is also a div class quote. And there's a whole list, if we look down here, of all these divs that are quotes. So this one must be the last one. So what I want to do is I want to get all divs with the class quotes. So I'm going to copy the class, and I'm going to come back over here. Let me create a divs equals soup dot find all. And I want to get all divs where the class is equal to quote. And that should give me a list of all my divs. And here's all the divs that we want. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I want to ultimately get 3 different lists. One list of quotes, one list of authors, and then one list of tags. So let's start off with quotes. let's find where the quote is. So if I look here, we can see that it is span. Let's see. Span class text. So let me play around with this a little bit. Let's just look at one element. One element, can we find span class text? Let's find to div dot find span, and then for our class, we want to do text. Let's see what that gets us. Okay, cool, that gets us the quote. And then we can do text. And just in case, let's use strip just in case any information comes in there that we don't want to get. And just a reminder, what strip does is say like there is a line, if there's a line break, like if this was supposed to be two different lines, um, we would see the \n character to represent that this is two different lines. Strip just gets rid of that for us, so we get something a lot more clean. We don't have any of those escape characters in our string. Okay, so that gives us one quote. So what we can do is we can say for div in divs, we want to append our quotes list that we created. And we want to get, instead of the first element of divs, we want it to be div. And that should go through and get all the quotes from the website. And so if I go in and run that, you see now I have a list of the different quotes, starting with this one, the world as we have created, the world as we've created, and so forth. Okay, so now that I have our quotes, let's move on to authors. Now, let's see, let's go back to here and see where authors is. Oh, that looks convenient. We get small class authors. So let's see what happens then when we go to div. We'll just look at the first div and let's find, what was that? That was small class author. So let's find small, and then for the class, we want it to be author. And let's see, and we get Albert Einstein, which is what we wanted to get. So let's change that to text, so we just get Albert Einstein and then add that strip function on the end of it. Okay, and I'm just going to use the same thing I did up here for divs and divs. We want to cycle through all these different divs. And let's append our authors list. So I'm going to make authors.append and then put that text into the list. Run that, and now we just got a list of all the authors, starting with Albert Einstein at the top and ending with Steve Martin at the bottom. We see we have Albert Einstein at the top and Steve Martin at the bottom. Okay, lastly, now we want to find tags. So let's see, how do we want to go about this? So we have a div class tag, and that seems to be, let's see if we can find that. Let's start out with trying to find that div class. So in divs, just for our first element, find, we want to find a div. We just copy and paste this to make this a little faster. Div class, was it tags? Div class tags. Perfect, and we get all of these tags. So okay, so we want to find the class tags. Then we notice that each one of these tags, let's see, deep thought thinking, these are all in A's. So if we want to get to those, we're going to have to do another find all. We want to find all A's. And then, or actually we might be able to skip that step to make our code a little bit cleaner. Let me just finish this. If we do class, okay, that is not returning anything. Let me see, what class is this? Okay, this is class tag. Okay, and that gives us all of our tags. I might just be able to skip that div. Okay, yeah, I can skip the div and just get the class, just find all the A's and that will return the tags. Now this is where things are getting complicated, are going to be a little bit more complicated because we actually want to keep a list of this. So what I can do is, let's just call this TS tags for short. What I can do is I can make this a list of T for T in TS. And that should return a list of the tags that I want. But I can add a function in here, so I can add our text function. And if I add the text, I just get the text for it. And just keep things safe, I'm going to add strip as well. So now we have this that goes through that will return a list of the tags for our for each div. So let's turn this into a for loop, just like what we did with the other ones. So I'm going to say for div in divs, change that to div. Okay, indent that. And now we want to append this to our tags list, tags.append equals, I'm sorry, that's supposed to be parentheses. Okay, and now we get the tags for each one of the quotes, and we can spot check this. Let's look at this one's third to last one should be Edison, failure, inspiration, and paraphrased. Third to last one, Edison, failure, inspiration, and paraphrased. Perfect. So now that we have those together, what I can do is I can create a for loop where I'm just going to take that, and then let's get our 3 different lists that we were making here. 1, 2, 3, and then I can say for div and divs, I'll start off with our quotes. Then after our quotes, I'll get our authors. And then after our authors, I'm going to get our tags. If I run that, we should have everything that we need. I can then take this and turn it into a nice dictionary. I'm just going to call this page dic, and I'll have quotes be equal to quotes. Then I'll have author be equal to authors. And then I have tags equal to tags. Do df, and then we can create a data frame off of this, and then enter that dictionary. And there we go. Now we have a data frame with our quotes, our authors, and the tags for those quotes. So we are close to getting a function of something that we would want to get. However, we want to make sure that this can cycle through. It can cycle through the quotes, so I want to now find where this next button is. And let's see, if I look, it's lil class next. So let me create something down here that will find what next is equal to, let's copy this. But in this case, we want to do soup find, that's a list li, and the class is next. And let's see what that brings back. Okay, so that brings back a link. So let's find the A. That gets us a little bit closer, and let's get that link specifically. Okay, so now I get the link that I can append on to my base URL. So that will be important for us to be able to cycle through. So let's think about this. We want to now create some kind of loop. We want these to stay outside of the loop because we don't want them to be reset. However, we're going to have to create a new loop for every different page. So let's come back to the start. We will start off with this. That's what we need to begin all this. And instead of page, I'm going to just set page is going to be equal to URL. And then I'm going to, at the top, I'm going to set next equal to nothing. So then I can have page will be equal to URL plus next. Let's see, that works just fine. I guess one thing I could do is I could get rid of this backslash. Let's experiment with that. What happens when I take that plus this? Okay, that's completely fine. We can have two backslashes backslashes right next to each other, so I'm not going to worry about getting rid of that backslash there when we add these two onto each other. So this will run through, and then we'll want to get our next. However, there is going to be a point where next will no longer work. So we'd want to use a try function. And we'll try next. We'll try to get this, but if this doesn't work, that means we're on the last page. So then I'll have an accept function, and I'll just set next equal to stop. And that's how we know to stop cycling through all of this. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a while loop. And I'm going to say if next is not equal to stop, then we're going to go ahead and run all of this information. And just for fun, why don't we just print out print page just so we can see what pages are scraped. So you can see it went through and it scraped all these pages and then it stopped at page 10. Let's look at page 10 really quick to make sure it's the last page. And you see here, there's no more next button, so that is the last page. And it resulted in a data frame of 100 quotes. So now let me get rid of this. So now we have our data frame of quotes and we are ready to perform analysis on it.